Steve Chaney from North Carolina, Master Coordinator. He's on the MEC, which we're happy he is because we know what he stands for, and we know that actually one of the best reasons from our Faye and I respect or perspective wanting Steve on the MEC is because the home office has a lot of respect for Steve, and they'll listen to what he says. But anyway, I'm going to turn over. He's going to talk about sports nutrition tonight. So Steve, take it over.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary. And yes, I'm going to talk about the science behind the Shaklee Sports Nutrition Program. And summer is a perfect time for sports nutrition. I mean, you could do sports any time of the year, but in cold country in particular, you don't tend to get out as much. In summer, you're out and about. You're engaged in activities. You may not think of yourself as an athlete, but I remember Suzanne used to say that when Bob Ferguson and I got together for a tennis match, we didn't take any prisoners. Everybody, likes to win and likes to compete at some level. So that's really what it's all about. So let's talk about what the Shaklee Sports Nutrition Program does for maximizing workouts and maximizing training. So when you work out, and Gary, I think on a previous call you talked about you working out every day. I like to work out at least 4 or 5 times a week. And when you work out, you want to optimize those workouts. That time is precious. Particularly if you're like Gary and you're going to work out on a daily basis, you want to shorten your recovery time. So you want to be able to recover by the next day, so you're ready for the next workout. And you also want to, you're working out for a purpose. You're trying to increase muscle mass, or maybe if you're past a certain age, maintain muscle mass. You may be looking for greater speed, greater endurance. You may be looking for lower blood pressure, better health, all sorts of reasons. But you want to optimize the effect of your workouts. And if you are performing, whether it's on the tennis court, like Bob and I have, as we say, we've had some epic matches over the years, or whether it is really on a professional or semi-professional level, you want to perform at the highest level. You want to maximize your strength, your speed, your endurance. You want to have the mental focus you need to perform at your best level. And no matter what level you're competing at, that difference between winning and losing is really small. So you want to be, you don't want to just be part way there. You want to be all the way there. So let's talk about the safety and efficacy part of it as well, because, there's a lot of junk out there. And you really don't want to be getting some of that stuff. You don't want dangerous herbs or dangerous stimulants. Those things can actually kill you. You don't want the artificial stuff, the artificial sweeteners, the flavors, the colors. You're trying to improve your body, and that means you're not going to be putting a bunch of artificial stuff in it. Obviously, you don't want banned substances. But it's not, if you listen to some of the stories out there, it's not always that athletes are making poor choices and going out and choosing the banned substances. Sometimes it's just because the supplement manufacturer that they're using had poor quality controls. And maybe they made something with a banned substance in it, they didn't clean up very well, and then they made their nutritional supplement. So you really want a supplement company that you can trust. And you want something that's proven. You don't want a lot of hype. You don't want misleading advertising. You don't want to rely on what I call Muscle Magazine. And I just kind of made that up. There are lots of those things out there. You don't want to rely on testimonials or just your buddy's recommendations, because what do they really know about the science behind the products? I mean, the placebo effect is something more than 50% when you're talking about sports nutrition. So just because it worked for them doesn't mean that it really works if you put it in a clinical study. So you want to look for ingredients that are backed by solid science. And science has been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. So if you really want a company that you can trust for your sports nutrition products, Shaklee is the one that fits the bill. Shaklee has 57 years of absolute integrity. This is a company whose products are based on solid science, not on hype, not on testimonials, and not on paid endorsements. I mean, you can always hire some football player for a few $100,000 and get them to talk about how great your products are, but they may never have actually used those products. They may be using steroids. I mean, who knows? Shaklee only uses natural ingredients, and like I said, to me, that's very important. I work out so that I can improve my health, to improve my body, and I don't want to be putting a bunch of junk in there. They're manufactured according to pharmaceutical standards, which basically means you're not going to have any surprises. You know, they do over 1,000 quality control tests in a single product, over 100,000 quality control tests every year. So what's on the label is in the product. It's pure, it's potent. You're never going to find stuff in there that you don't expect. And as I said earlier, Shaklee is the science company. These are products based on solid science. They have over 100 published clinical studies in peer-reviewed scientific journals. You know, that's more than the next 5 competitors put together. And people ask me, who are the next 5 competitors? Well, it varies from year to year. But the bottom line is that none of these companies are doing a significant amount of real science. So Shaklee always stays ahead of the pack. And these are studies in real people. You know, if you look at some of the sort of so-called published clinical studies that other companies will cite, they're not actually clinical studies. They're studies that are done in rats or mice, or maybe they're just in test tubes. Maybe they're not even published in scientific journals. Maybe they're not even done with their products. But these are studies in real people just like you and me that are published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. But you talk about sports nutrition, and it's not just the trust factor. Shaklee has a heritage in the sports nutrition arena. Started back in 1980 when Shaklee became a nutritional consultant to the U.S. Olympic ski team. And at that point, the U.S. Olympic ski team was pretty much a joke. They hardly ever won medals. Well, just 4 years later in Sarajevo, the ski team won 3 golds and 2 silvers, which was sort of a new high for the U.S. Olympic ski team. 1983, Shaklee powered the first American team to reach Mount Everest, the summit of Mount Everest, without oxygen. That's a huge feat. 1995, Shaklee provided nutritional support for the first human-powered North Pole expedition. And it means exactly what it says. They didn't have sled dogs. They pulled the sleds all the way to the North Pole. And Shaklee fueled the longest human-powered flight in history, 72 miles across the Aegean Sea. That's the equivalent of 2.5 marathons back-to-back. That's a huge feat. From starting in 1993 and all the way through 2012, when NASA shut down their space program, Shaklee provided something called AstroAid to all the astronauts. I can talk more about that in a minute. And finally, Shaklee athletes have won 116 medals, 65 of them gold in Olympic Games over the years. There's no other sports nutrition company out there that can really match those kinds of results. So, let's see. Okay, that just was a duplicate. Sorry about that. So how does nutrition help? What is sports nutrition all about? Well, the top 3 ways that nutrition can help you perform at your highest level. Number 1 is to help you increase your endurance, your alertness, and your focus. Number 2 is to optimize hydration and blood sugar levels before, during, and after exercise. And number 3 is to maximize your post-workout recovery. So let's look at how Shaklee does each of those things and how good nutrition really works in each of those areas. And if you look at Shaklee's basic sports nutrition program, their energy chews, their performance, and their physique, that's your before exercise, your during exercise, your after exercise combo, that's a program that's really designed to do all of those things. So let's start with the energy chews. Their primary ingredients are caffeine, and the clinical studies show that caffeine improves alertness, improves energy levels, has a modest effect on endurance, not big, but that alertness and energy is really helpful. The theanine reduces stress. It reduces anxiety. It improves mental focus and reaction time. And the good news is those things work well together. They're actually synergistic, which means that the two of them together, their effect is more than just additive. It's a great combination. And that's what you find in Shaklee's Energy Chews. Now, the minute I say caffeine, some people are going to be thinking about, well, I've been reading the papers that this caffeine in some of these products really isn't good. But we need to remember that caffeine's very widely used. I mean, 95, 99% of Americans, drink a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, that sort of thing, or colas with caffeine in it every single day. But what we do need to recognize is too much can be a problem. So it can cause heart palpitations on people who are sensitive. Not everybody can use it. It's not recommended for children. But also how much caffeine you're getting is important. Soft drinks typically provide you with 35 to 50 milligrams of caffeine. Shaklee's Energy Chews are right at 60 milligrams, so just a little bit above a soft drink. Tea, 40 to 120 milligrams. Regular coffee starts at about 95 milligrams and goes up to about 200. And some of these things that you hear about in the news, that they're getting the bad press now, are in the 160 to 300 milligram range. So it really is how much caffeine is the issue. So let's talk about the Energy Chews. What they do is they provide the energy and the focus you need for your workouts and for your events. That combination of caffeine and theanine gives you that sustained energy, improves your alertness and focus, improves your performance. But again, as opposed to so many of those other products that you'll find out there that are marketed to athletes to give them caffeine and maybe a few other things, they've got artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, artificial preservatives. That stuff you're not going to find in any of the Shaklee products. Now let's look at the second product, the Performance. And here we're talking about hydration. And that's because dehydration can affect your performance. This is just a chart of fluid loss, a percent of body weight. And, by the time you get to 2% fluid loss, you start to get some discomfort. You start to be developing some weakness. So already you're not performing at your optimal level. By the time you get to 4% loss of fluid, you're down to you have poor concentration, your heart rate starts to increase, 6% disorientation, and below that, total collapse, heat stroke. So, you need to maintain that hydration. Now, some people will say, well, just drink water. And that's true. If you're talking about getting water, hydration is just making sure you have enough water in your system. Water is good. There's nothing wrong with that. And, once you finish an event and you can sit around and you can sip water for the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes, hour or two, water's fine. But what happens is it takes a while for our thirst sensor to recognize how dehydrated we are. It takes a while to equilibrate. So it makes it hard to judge your hydration. That's why sports drinks supply electrolytes as well as water. It makes it easier to judge your hydration levels. And you're also going to supply carbohydrate. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. But again, you have to look at what kind of carbohydrate, how much carbohydrate. Those can be big issues. And my final thought on sports drinks or rehydration formulas, if it comes in blue or green or purple, just avoid it. That's all artificial stuff. You don't want that. Now let's talk about the glucose levels. Why do we want, why is there glucose or why are there sugars in these things? Why do we want to maintain optimal blood glucose levels? Well, that's because the muscle has three major energy sources. One is what you call our onboard carbohydrate stores. The technical term for that is glycogen. The second is glucose circulating in the bloodstream, and the third is fat. And the bottom line is that high-intensity, short-duration exercise is fueled primarily by your muscle glycogen stores. but you can use blood glucose during endurance exercise to preserve that glycogen. So that's why it's important to keep those blood glucose levels optimal, because everybody wants to sprint to the finish. Our son has run in a number of marathons and Los Angeles marathons, and you know, his goal is not to finish in the top 5 or 10, just to finish the race. So, you know, and they have a little electronic thing in their shoes, so you can follow them along. You can be at the finish line at the appropriate time. And the interesting thing is, this may be an hour after the top runners have crossed the finish line, determined who won the race. But everybody, when they get to that finish line, a lot of those people want to beat somebody else to the finish line. So everybody wants to sprint to the finish. If you keep your blood glucose levels high during endurance exercise, you're going to spare your muscle glycogen reserves, because your muscles will use that glucose instead of burning their glycogen stores. And now you've got those glycogen stores you need for that high-intensity, short-duration sprint to the finish. So that's really where the sugars in these come from. The other important thing when we talk about mental focus is our brain can only use blood glucose as a source of energy. So you've got to keep those glucose levels constant. Now, the interesting thing when you look at the design and performance, there are two major events. The Daedalus Project, I talked about it a minute ago, that longest human-powered flight, 72 miles, it's equivalent of 2.5 marathons back-to-back, and there were no downhill stretches, because this was a human-powered, a pedal-powered airplane, never got more than 6 feet off the ocean. So you couldn't relax during that whole 2.5 marathons. And so there's a team at MIT, they designed the plane that actually won the contest. And they said, they went to Gatorade, Exceed, all these other products in the marketplace. Nothing out there could sustain that kind of energy. So because of what Shaklee had done in terms of the Olympics, they approached Shaklee and said, could you design something that would allow this type of endurance? And what Shaklee did was to come up with a unique blend of simple sugars and complex carbohydrates that could sustain that kind of endurance without causing stomach cramping and dehydration. Because if you put too much simple sugars in there, it's just going to cause stomach cramping and dehydration. So you have to have that mix of simple sugars and complex carbohydrates. Shaklee pioneered that. They've patented it. They've trademarked it. Nobody else can make anything like performance. And then there's the Shaklee asteroid story. And this is, I call it Houston, we have a problem. But basically, early on in the space program, you may have noticed when the astronauts splashed down, they weren't televised right away. It was really usually the next day. And that's because there was a certain amount of dehydration and electrolyte imbalance that occurred when they went into orbit and came back down again. That left them disoriented, nauseous. They were in no shape to be paraded across in front of cameras when they first splashed down. So NASA came to Shaklee and said, could you design something for us that will prevent that? And Shaklee did. They called it Asteroid. It was in every shuttle flight from 1993 to 2012. And from that comes a unique blend of electrolytes that you find in performance. If you look at the clinical studies, there's a study with runners, and what they just showed compared water as a hydration source to performance. And now they look at blood glucose levels. And you can see, of course, if you're just getting water, you're not going to be maintaining those blood glucose levels at optimal levels. You have that unique formulation performance, you maximize those blood glucose levels, you are preserving your muscle glycogen stores. So what does that mean in the real world? Well, here was a study with cyclists. Again, they had them cycling variable speeds for 200 minutes, one of them just getting water, the other's getting performance. And then they asked, if you went at 80% of VO2 max, which means you're pedaling just about flat out, how long can you pedal? Well, the ones that have been getting water for the past 200 minutes could only go 2 minutes flat out. Those that have been getting performance, they preserve their glycogen stores, they could go 33 minutes just about flat out. So, that's the proof is in the pudding. That shows that this stuff really works. And finally, let's talk about physique. and that's because you want to maximize your post-workout recovery. Physique is based on some studies by Dr. John Ivey at the University of Texas, and what he found is that insulin is actually the master hormone that drives the replenishment of those energy stores, those glycogen stores in your muscle, but also drives that rebuilding of muscle tissue. And there's a 2 to 4 hour window of maximum insulin sensitivity after you work out. And so what he did, and he showed if you add the proper amount of carbohydrate to a protein supplement, that can maximize your insulin response, which is going to maximize both your glycogen stores and your increase in muscle mass, which is kind of funny because there are some companies out there that pride themselves on having as little carbohydrate as possible in their protein supplement. Well, that's great, but you're not going to maximize your recovery because you're not going to maximize that insulin response. So that's what physique does. It maximizes your workout, helps repair those damaged muscles, helps you build firm, lean muscles, restore the muscle energy. And again, there's no stimulants, steroids, banned supplements, no artificial junk in there, and there's no hype. And a lot of these things, you go on a lot of websites, you look what a lot of companies are selling, they've got fraudulent ingredients. They'll tell you these are great, but you actually go to the scientific literature, and there's no evidence that the things work. What you're going to find in Shaklee is they're backed by published clinical studies. And again, let me just show you that. Here's one where they took a group of highly trained cyclists. One of them got protein only, so that would be one of those. And this is after they finished, they rode for 2 hours, and immediately after they finished, and again 2 hours later, they used one of these 3 formulations. One was protein only, same amount of protein in the Shaklee Physique, but only protein. So this would be like those protein supplements that pride themselves on being low in carbohydrate. The others got carbohydrate only because carbohydrate loading was a big thing back in those days. But the other got that unique carbohydrate protein blend that you find in physique. Well, here are the study results. If you look at the insulin response, very little with protein alone. Of course, you get an insulin response. That's the blue with carbohydrate only. But you put those two together, you get that synergistic effect, and now you get a much better insulin response. And if you look at glycogen stores, those are your muscle energy stores, again, you get a much better response there as well. And then one of the things that happens is that insulin causes the production of growth hormone and other hormones that actually stimulate the growth of your muscle cells. And so this is doing one with weightlifters for resistance training. Then immediately after and 2 hours later, they have the same 3 formulations. And once again, if you look at the increase in growth hormone levels, which directly translates into that increase in muscle mass, much better results with the group that used physique. Now, we also, so that's your basic core sports nutrition program. But for optimal results, I really recommend that you add what Shaklee calls their lean and healthy program. That is their 180 smoothie mix, because it maximizes your muscle mass, and it works synergistically with physique. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And Vitalizer, because that helps provide those nutrients you need to sustain and repair your muscle. So let's look at that smoothie mix. You've seen this before, but just want to remind you that the whole idea behind the 180 smoothie mix was based on groundbreaking research done by Dr. Lehman at the University of Illinois, 5 published clinical studies, over 250 participants, and what he and his colleagues showed is you start with a high-protein diet, one that provided about 30% protein, so about twice as much protein as the average American is getting, and you add 10 to 12 grams of the essential amino acid leucine. That becomes a very strong formulation. What leucine does, it's a branched-chain amino acid, and if you're familiar with sports nutrition, you've probably heard of branched-chain amino acids, but I call leucine the branched-chain amino acid that actually does the heavy lifting. Because of all the amino acids, it's the only one that specifically stimulates muscle cells to make new protein. And it's that new protein that's going to give those muscle cells their strength and their bulk. So the result is you preserve muscle mass while you lose weight and actually increase your muscle mass when you work out. That's what their clinical studies show, and that was the basis for the generation of the 180 smoothie mix. So, you've got the protein in there. It's sweetened with stevia and natural sugars for the carbohydrate, the leucine to help you build muscle, no artificial ingredients, a low glycemic index, and now we're starting to stabilize blood sugar. Very powerful. You got the 24 grams of protein in there. You can get non-GMO soy or whey protein, depending on your choice. You've got leucine in there, and I already talked about leucine, but the clinical studies show that if you're working out, that alone can give you a 33% increase in body mass. And here's the clinical study. This was published in 2011. If you look at, this was a group of adults 55 years old and older. They were overweight. They were put into a 3 times a week supervised exercise program. And the ones that just worked out, those were the gray bars. But the only difference was they had that 180 smoothie mix after each workout. That was the blue bars. So if you look at the center, you can see the ones that added the 180 smoothie mix had a greater increase in lean muscle mass, 33% as a matter of fact. But they also had if you look at the left and the right, they also had a much greater decrease in weight and a decrease in body fat. And I know this is bathing suit season. That becomes important to a lot of people. Well, if you're increasing your lean body mass and you're decreasing your fat mass, what are you doing? You're sculpting your body. You're reshaping your body for the look you want to sport while you're wearing your bathing suit. Now, let me talk about why I recommend both of those. They're kind of like a 1-2 punch. They complement each other. And that's because the sequencing of protein is very important. Clinical studies show us that whey protein, such as you find in physique, is utilized very quickly. So that's the kind of protein source you want to use immediately after your workout. Soy, which you can find in the Shaklee 180 smoothie mix, is metabolized more slowly. So that's what you want to use, maybe 30, 60 minutes after your workout to sustain the recovery. So the whey protein is great for that initial recovery response, the soy protein later on to help you sustain that recovery response. But remember also they work by complementary mechanisms. Physique has that higher carbohydrate to protein ratio to maximize the insulin response and to give you that very quick initial increase in muscle energy stores and increase in lean muscle mass. The 180 smoothie mix, on the other hand, has the added leucine. And what that does is help you prolong that increase in lean muscle mass. So these two work synergistically together. Now, finally, let's just talk about Vitalizer, why I recommend that. And that's because there's some other important ways that nutrition can really help maximize your exercise results. One is to provide the nutrients you might not be getting from your diet. You need all those essential nutrients for a healthy body, and also if you're going to get the max from your workouts. To help protect cells from oxidative damage, and number 3, to reduce inflammation. So let's talk about how Vitalizer does that. Providing those nutrients missing from the diet. If you start with the USDA food plate, that's the current recommendation. We used to have a food guide pyramid. That was the USDA decided that just must be too complicated because only 3% of Americans were actually eating that way. We're going to simplify it. We're going to create this food guide plate. Simple. Everybody's going to do it. Guess what? Only 3% of Americans actually eat according to the USDA food guide plate. So most people aren't getting those nutrients they need. That's why you really want to add a multivitamin, multimineral supplement to make sure that you're getting the nutrients you need. Number 2 was protecting cells from oxidative damage. And the bottom line is that exercise produces free radicals. And free radicals, as you probably know, are not necessarily a good thing. They can lead to aging, they can lead to cancer, they can lead to heart disease, they can lead to arthritis. That's probably not while you're exercising. So, there are great studies that show that antioxidants can reduce the free radical production during exercise. I could quote dozens of studies that show that. So you want to make sure you're getting antioxidants. And number 3 was inflammation. And, if you're working out or you're exercising on a regular basis, you're probably always going to have some inflammation from time to time. And what are the 3 nutrients that are most effective at decreasing inflammation? Antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, and polyphenols. And that's why Vitalizer is that perfect nutrition foundation. You've got the multivitamin there, multivitamin, multimineral in there, so you get all the vitamins and minerals your body needs. 80 of them, actually, 80 bio-optimized nutrients. You've got a comprehensive antioxidant spectrum, 26 antioxidants that all work together. They complement each other to really augment your body's antioxidant network. And then you've got the 7 omega-3s to help reduce inflammation. These are pure, ultra-pure pharmaceutical grade, and it didn't show it in here, but you also have the polyphenols. So you've got all the things that you really need to optimize the effects of your workout, all the nutrients you need to optimize the effects of your workouts. So that's really it. As I said, summer is a great time to think about maximizing the effectiveness of your workouts, your exercise, to improve your recovery, whether you're just playing softball, whether you're working out in the gym, whether you are having a killer tennis game with somebody, whatever it is, you want to maximize the results of your, you want to have the best exercise experience you can, and you want the best recovery. So you start with the Lean and Healthy Kit, Vitalizer, and the Shaklee 180 Smoothies. And I'm talking about it as a kit just because in the months of June and July, we've got that great special that Shaklee's offering. You put it on, get the kit, put it on auto ship, 3 months free shipping, and $100 coupon at the end of that. So, I'd say for the month of June, buy it as a kit. Take advantage of that. You add to that the Energy Chews and Performance for endurance and energy, and optimize your recovery with physique. And with that, Gary, I'll call it to a close, and you can open it up and see if anybody has questions.
Okay, good. Thanks, Steve. That's I tell you, listening, go through the sports nutrition, because I do work out every day, and I mean every day. And without those, I wouldn't have a chance. It's just so interesting. They do work. If anyone has a question, oh yeah, they really do. If anyone's working out, but like you say, whether it's playing softball or whatever it might be, it's gonna make a difference for you. If anyone has a question, comment, now's the time. And so appreciate everyone coming on and listening and taking part, and hope this is helpful. And I'm not having any questions, so just a couple of thanks on there, Steve, so thanks much. And what we'll do is we'll call it a night. Thanks for coming on. Have a great week, folks. And that's how you make it a great week. That's what you have to do. So thanks for coming on, and we will talk with you later. Have a great one. Good night.